The eating competition really surprises people when they see me. It's true, I promise. I can't tell you how excited we are that you have decided to be here today, and I really mean that. Especially during this special and exciting time in the church calendar that I refer to as Ministry Palooza. I remember vividly being a communications director on a church staff, and when August would roll around, all of the ministry activity that had been dormant during the summer suddenly springs new life. And inevitably, a soccer mom whose kids have gone back to school shows up at my office door with all these great new ministry ideas for the women's ministry she's been thinking about during the summer in her Beth Moore study du jour. And she implores me to communicate it to all the land and make sure that every woman in the community attends. So I understand that right now your body is here, but your mind may not be entirely here, and I appreciate that. But it speaks volume that you have decided to come to MinistryCom, and it says a lot about how you see your role as a minister, and I appreciate that. I have to say that I wasn't expecting this, but I felt, as I read those prayer requests, just an extra burden, an extra responsibility with our time with you today. Matt will tell you I'm not an emotional person. He cries at movies. I don't. He says I have a heart of steel. We'll explain why later when you understand the role I serve. But as I read those prayer requests, I was completely overcome with a burden for your lives and the roles that you serve in. And I could just hear your heart's cry and your passion for wanting to be used by God to share the good news of Jesus Christ. And I remember having those exact same prayer requests and sitting in my office and closing my office door and saying, God, this issue is bigger than me. I can't do it. You've got to take care of this. And so I appreciate how candid you were, and I'm a little surprised at, how it's affected me here. Now back to work. So we'll get serious now. God totally cracks me up in that he has given me and Matt very special and unique opportunities to get to look at ministry dynamics from a unique perspective. I mean, as we said in our intro, how many communications directors are married to youth pastors? It just doesn't happen in the real world. And we'll save why for when youth pastors aren't in the room, because we know why that's the case. But we have... we'll be nice. But Matt and I have been ministry partners for about 10 years now in different scenarios. We started our ministry careers together really at a mega church in Indianapolis that about 2,000 people called their church home. And Matt was the student minister and I was the director of communications. And it was in those ministry roles that we got to work a lot together. And over time, we became good friends and ultimately fell in love and got married. Now, I need to say this caveat. In the next half hour, we're going to be half hour to 40 minutes, we're going to be sharing with you some insights of how to improve relationships between the pastoral world and the support world. Now, I promise you that we will give you takeaways that will go beyond marry the outreach pastor, because we realize that is not an option for most of you in the room. But marriage has certainly helped us in growing to understand better the perspective of the other world and appreciate it, and sometimes work better in it, sometimes it raises more challenges. But it has been a great opportunity for me to learn more about that world by being married to Matt. After being married for about a year, Matt felt a calling to start a new church movement, and he felt really called to a large city. And through a lot of prayer and through a lot of wild God things that transpired, about 2 years ago, we moved to the Miami area to start a church plant called the Pursuit Christian Church. And the Pursuit now we are getting ready to launch our third campus, and we have about 150 people who call the Pursuit their church home. And so God blows my hair back that he's given us the chance to get to see church in a mega church, 2,000 people, corporate kind of feel world, to the organic, let's go and figure out life and figure out people and figure out this new church world with a smaller environment. And then the most exciting and important ministry partnership we've ever embarked on began this summer when we became parents to Chase Mehaffey. We brought Chase home from Taiwan this summer. I love this picture. I think it looks like it'll be the cover of his CD album, his music album. Doesn't he look like a rock star? He'll be signing autographs at the Fishhook booth following the session, so you can go meet him. He is here today. But being a parent to Chase has obviously been, it has brought a whole new world of bringing spiritual development and communications together into the life of one little soul. I realize now that my mission field has narrowed down to one person, and I feel great responsibility with that. But in all of these ministry roles, as I reflect on them, I reflect on Matt and look at the way he looks at things, I'm just so excited that you guys get access to his big brains today. Because as I've watched him minister over the years, I've found that he tackles every single thing he does from a godly and passionate perspective. And he also does it in a way that shows how very much he needs my complementary gift set of organizing details and creating messages to help bring things to fruition. So I think what you're going to learn from his insights and some of the takeaways I'll share will be very beneficial to each of you today. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else to add?
I would just say also that working with Janie, even as a student minister for a long time, and her as the director of communications, I always really appreciated the fact that, sometimes you'd work with somebody in the church who, you got the fact that they kind of saw this as just a project, as a job, but I always felt like Janie wanted to come alongside, be the biggest cheerleader for me as a youth minister, and our youth ministry as a program, to make it the very best and to help as many students find their way back to God as possible. And so I'm equally excited that she's going to be here to speak to you guys and bring some real legs to some of the things that we're going to be talking about.
Great. During our time with you today, we want to focus on the various roles that we each play in church leadership. And our hope is that you will come away gaining a new appreciation for the role you serve in and gain a new perspective for the roles of the other people on your church leadership team. We know as communicators that the key to effective communication is knowing and understanding your audience and speaking to them in the way that they listen best. And I think sometimes in the busyness, hurriedness of day-to-day communications, church communications life, we forget that sometimes our primary audience is the people we serve alongside, and that we have to slow down and adapt our message to that audience so that we can work together toward bringing the vision to fruition. Now, for clarification, today we're going to use the term pastor to refer to the people who serve the responsibility of spiritual leadership. And then we'll use the term either support role or church communicator for those of us who serve in supporting the ministry function of the church. Now, I'm very aware that many of you in this room probably wear both hats, and you'll have to deal with your own schizophrenia as we weave our way through this presentation. But to keep things simple, we know that everyone in the church is called to be a minister. Yeah. Whether you're a paid staff member or you're accepting Jesus Christ for the first time, you're called to be a minister of Jesus Christ and share the good news. But when we look at the operating system of a team that leads the church, we're going to use the terms pastor role and support role for what we're doing today. Now, ever since we've moved to Miami, my career ministry has been with a group called Fishhook. We're a creative communications company that help churches communicate with creativity and clarity. Our goal is to help churches remove barriers and create avenues for more effective communication. And I love my job because as I get to work with churches, I work sometimes with pastors, sometimes with support people, but it's always with people who want to improve their communication. And I spent a lot of time with communicators, and as I watched them, I realized that this role has really evolved over the past 10 years. When I started in my role at Traders Point, it was just the second year that role had even existed. And at that time, there were a lot of us who were new, figuring things out. And now this role has become a vital piece. Even church plants are creating this role as a beginning part of their church structure because they appreciate how important church communicators are to the message of the church. But I also know that as this role becomes more prominent, with it becomes some challenges. How many of you guys have picked up your Fishhook coloring book? If you haven't, I encourage you to go upstairs and pick it up from the Fishhook booth. And I have to tell you, this coloring book deals with a lot of issues that we as church communicators deal with on a day-to-day basis. This is the senior pastor. He makes announcements on Sunday. He just announced a major church-wide initiative that I knew nothing about. He likes to surprise me. This is the youth minister. He created a new edgy website just for the students. He likes to surprise me. This is my mailman. He brings me lots of things from my church that I've never seen before. He likes to surprise me too. I have to tell you that this coloring book came together a little too easy. We brought several church communicators together into a room and gave them lunch and said, okay, let's just start talking about issues that you deal with and let's see what's common. I'm talking like 10 minutes we had it done, because immediately everybody started saying what issues they dealt with, and everyone resonated with them right away. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is the reason behind why those challenges happen. And we believe, and what Matt's going to share with us in some teaching time here, is that the reason for those challenges is that each of us on that church leadership team approach what we do from a unique perspective. And recently, Matt shared some really cool teaching as he was thinking about the roles on the team of the pursuit and where we're heading. And I really appreciated what he was saying from a biblical perspective. And I've asked him to share some of that insight today and how he looks at things from a pastor brain. And then we're going to interview him a little bit and pick a little bit more from our perspective of what we'd want to know, and then do some application of how we can run with that information from here.
You know, when Janie asked me to come and be here with you guys today, I was a little skeptical. She said, you want to come alongside and speak with me and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I walked in the room, and I was looking for like a lead pastor dunking booth. Like you stand up in line, throw balls, and drop in the dunking tape or a dunking tank or just something. But I just want to say that I am absolutely honored to be here with you guys today. And I wanted to just encourage you and thank you for taking this time out to be here at Ministry Com. We pastors are at conferences every other week, so it's about time you get your chance. And I am glad that you want to be a learner, and I'm glad that you want to grow in your role and to be the best that you possibly can be for God. And my hope is that today you can get a peek into my brain, see my strengths, see my weaknesses, maybe be able to see your lead pastor or other pastors in their perspective, because the goal should always be to take the vision and move it together in the same direction. And that's what we want to do today. Bow with me real quick. I just want to ask God to be with us as we talk here at this time. God, open our hearts, open our ears, even ours on stage. May you just speak directly to us, God. It is an honor to be serving in your kingdom. May we all do this together in unity. And Father, we just know that there's some turmoil out there. There's some frustrations. There's some conflict. God, may we be peacemakers. And may we be... So look for unity and through Jesus on all of our teams so more people can know Jesus too. In his name we pray. Amen. Here's the teaching time real briefly. I'm going to hit this really quick, and if you want to grab a pen, jot some stuff down here, you may want to do this. In the Old Testament, you will see very clearly God exercising his work through three particular offices: the prophet, the priest, and the king. The prophet is the big picture guy, right? The prophet is the guy who gets the big picture, who takes the message from God and brings it to the people. And then you have the priest. And the priest is the person who loves on and ministers to the people. And then you have the king, who takes the rule of God and brings it in a tangible way, in a systems way, to the earth, to the kingdom. And you will not find any single person in the Old Testament who is perfectly balanced in all three of these offices. You will not find that person. But then you'll see on a quiet, unsuspecting night about 2,000 years ago, where God empties himself into the person of Jesus Christ, who perfectly models all three of these offices for us. You'll see God, Jesus the prophet, who is speaking with this authority, the truth, and this new authority that was just leaving the scholars in the synagogue absolutely speechless. He came as prophet. And then you see Jesus as priest, who became a servant to all, and even reached to the edges of society, the most scandalous people, to help them find their way back to God. And you see Jesus modeling the king as he displayed for us in the most tangible way possible. Put flesh on the kingdom, on how we live as kingdom living people. And all we have to do is look at the life of Jesus and see the life that we were ultimately created for. We see him living as king. But what does it have to do with us today? As followers of Christ, as the people of God, moving along with God, where he's moving in this world today, we are created in the image of God through his son Jesus. These three offices have not gone away. They still exist today in each and every one of us. And I'm going to show you today that each of us lean towards one of these particular offices. We lean towards our strengths. And I'd like to walk you through each of these offices in greater detail. And I think you'll be really easy to see where you fall. But what I'd also like you to do is to envision yourself sitting in your staff meeting. Okay? And I want you to kind of identify others around that table as prophet. Who are the prophets? Who are the priests? Who are the kings? So let's go into this. I'm going to go really quickly through these, so you might want to write very fast. First of all, let's look at the prophet. As I said before, a prophet is a person who is focused on communicating God's word to others. These are the people that spend a lot of their time studying from God's word, writing in their Moleskine journals, you know what I'm talking about. They're just always in their quiet time, okay? And then your Kindle. How many of you have a Kindle? Right now, I got a few of you who are on the cutting edge of reading the Kindle. I don't have one yet, but I'd like to get one. What is on their Kindle? You'll see that they're reading maybe N.T. Wright, Tim Keller, John Piper, tons of different commentaries. You'll see those pretty common on their Kindles. And what are prophets vital for? They're vital for casting the overall vision of the church. They know where the church is going. They know what the church stands for. And if you remove the prophet out of the situation, with priests and kings only there, you'll see that the church would wander aimlessly pretty easily. But there's some potential problems in a prophet as well. Prophets can sometimes speak truth without grace. They kind of lean heavily on the truth side and forget to bring grace to the situation. Sometimes we can bulldoze people with the my way or the highway attitude, because as prophets, God has spoken. There's no need to talk about it. There's no need to dialogue about it. God's spoken. This is the way we're going. Let's do it. And there's also some potential idols. When prophets stand very firmly on their perspective without bringing in the perspectives of the kings and the priests. And those potential idols can be knowledge. It's all about the head knowledge, and that knowledge never works its way to the heart. It can be certain communicators. Talk about all the time this communicator that they're reading a lot of, they're listening to a lot of their podcasts, you hear them kind of putting them up on a pedestal, or maybe it's even the position itself. So look around your staff meeting. Can you identify who those prophets are? Let's look at the priests. A priest, again, is someone who is focused solely on meeting the needs of others. Loving on people is the most important task of the church, they'll tell you. They bring the presence of Christ to the people. On their Kindle, they had a Shane Claiborne book. They read it, got convicted, sold their Kindle on eBay, and gave the money to the homeless. That's a priest. They're vital in every church for being the pulse, the heartbeat of the church. They like to take the lofty ideas, the strategies, and they like to bring them to the ground floor. Without a priest, I kind of look at a church being kind of like the Tin Man in Oz. They're well built and strong, but they don't have a heart. We can sometimes see churches that are missing that priest element to it. And they're the people who love to follow up when they don't see someone in their community group or their church for a while. They're the first ones to pick up the phone and wonder where they're at. But there's also some potential problems with the priest. They're very quick to shoot down other people's ideas in a brainstorming session because they're not focused on the people. They'll shoot down ideas very quickly. They like to meet the felt needs of the people. And oftentimes, that's not the root of the issue. The root of the issue is a sin problem, and they forget to bring along the fact that there's a sin problem there, and we need to bring the gospel into that situation. And sometimes speaking the truth hurts. Where the prophet leans too heavily on the truth without grace, they can lean too much on the grace side and not bring truth to the issue. And there's some idols here as well for the priests, and that can be, they're kind of a people pleaser. They just want to please everyone, and in doing so, nothing maybe gets done. So look around your staff meeting and identify who those priests are. And then there's the king. The king is focused on building the needed systems and strategies for moving people from point A to point B. They're the pragmatic thinkers. On their Kindle, they'll have Tribes by Seth Godin, Good to Great, Purpose-Driven Church, The Coming Church Revolution, Simple Church. Those are books that are on their Kindle. They're vital for getting things done. Taking the vision of the prophet and creating a clear and tangible pathway and marketing it to the people. But there's some potential problems with kings as well. They can get so focused on the systematic thinking that they fail to see where the Spirit is moving. Sometimes they focus too much on deadlines and numbers as the only milestones of success. Become program-driven, maybe. And some of the potential idols, if we forget as kings to see where the prophets are coming from or to see the perspective of the priests, is that our idols can become control or maybe past accomplishments. Who are the kings? Maybe you're looking in a mirror right now. Now, I find myself as the prophet. I'll be very clear about that. That's not a very hard thing to see about me. I'm definitely a prophet, and I would assume here, I'm going to make the assumption that most of our lead pastors in this room either are a primary prophet or have a secondary prophet. Okay, that they're either a strong prophet or maybe there's some prophet in them. And I'm also going to make the assumption here that most of us in this room as communications directors or communication pastors or whatever your title is, are kings like my lovely wife here. Okay, I'm going to say that most of you are kings. So that's the relationship that I want to drill down here real briefly. I want to give you a glimpse into where we as prophets are coming from. As a prophet, I want you to know about me that I am absolutely obsessed about the vision. It keeps me up at night. It's all I think about at times. I feel the weight of the burden of getting that vision communicated out to the people. Here's the good news about me. I can see where the pursuit is going in the next 10 years. I can see very clearly where we're going. The bad news is, nothing else is on my radar. Nothing else is really bubbling up to the surface there. The pursuit, we're a multi-site church. We're about ready to launch our third campus here in 2010. I can vividly see, as we plant this church in downtown Miami, in this area called Brickell, I can see the young professionals from Venezuela and Brazil and Colombia and Cuba and in the States. I can see these people finding their way back to God. But also recently, our church communicator guru has had to remind me to get my message outline to her a lot more often recently. I got that other thing and the big idea, the big picture in my mind too much, and I'm forgetting to figure out the details. Also, as a prophet, I'm passionate about poring over God's Word. I'm that guy. And when I was a youth minister, when I was serving as a youth minister, I wanted so badly for students to get that. I wanted students to have that faith become theirs. So we created these events, the structure events, that we had worship services and small groups and retreats. And I was having this really difficult time getting our students to remember these events, to communicate these important things. I wanted them to get on their calendar. Sometimes they go in one ear and out the other. Parents, you ever had that problem with your student? But the problem, I found the challenge is that our church wasn't structured in a way that our church communication system got me much access to the people who really needed to get these things on the calendar, which were the parents. So that's as a prophet, that's some of the things that from my perspective. But again, we look at things differently, and I want to make sure you as kings get a chance to pick my brain here a bit. So I've asked Janie to ask me a few questions from your point of view about maybe from what my drill down a little bit.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind as I hear you talking, as I heard you prepare, is that there are a lot of different ways I could see that I tend to be that king, as Matt said, that I can support you in your ministry and help you. But what are the most important things I could do? What's the greatest value I bring to your world in helping that vision grow those legs and become reality?
Well, you just said, I mean, taking the vision, which, again, we're obsessed about. We want it to get, we want it to get to the people, okay? Don't think that we don't want that. That is exactly what we want, and we need our kings to come alongside of us and to put those legs on that vision. We need you to be looking just far enough ahead, to be seeing those details that need to get done and making sure that we're heading in that same direction of that original goal. We absolutely think that's absolutely vital. Now, we're a church that believes in the big idea. We also think that we want to communicate really one takeaway each week that all of our church and our kids and our students are all to kind of honed in on. We need our kings to be a champion of that big idea. Taking all of the messages that come in from soccer moms or whoever else and making sure that they reinforce the big idea of that week, protecting that big idea. I'd say that.
Well, we've talked a lot already, and we've hinted at some of the challenges that happen between the two roles, and I'm sure you guys are all thinking of your own scenarios and situation where these offices and perspectives have played out, but what are things that we can do to improve our relationship with a prophet-type pastor?
I would say, most prophets, we don't mind being questioned. But sometimes doing it in a respectful way to the position would be helpful. I also would say that don't just disagree. Like if you don't think that it's the right decision, don't just disagree, but offer a better solution. Don't just pop the bubble, but offer one to replace it. Show how it can be better. Show what we're missing. If you're not meeting with your prophet or your lead pastor at a regular time, you got to get that on your calendar, and you got to make that happen. I would say that and use that time wisely. I meet every week with our church communicator, who fills that role, but she fills other roles as well. And I would just say use that time wisely because it may be the only time that I can give you during that week. And so don't just pop in at 9 o'clock and just ready and start thinking this meeting is going to go well. Get some time beforehand. Think through some questions like, hey, over this next month, what are the most important things that we need to make sure we're communicating together? Ask that question or ask other questions that are going to make the prophet say to think about those things. We're running on a long time. I want to jump through a few more things here.
I can sense some frustration in the room that I would be having if I was sitting out here in that I work with a prophet, but the prophet is so in his brain and so thinking about the vision that I can't get access to what that vision is. I can't figure out where we're going because I can't get access to where the decisions are being made. I don't have a seat at the table where the decisions are being made. I can't be part of that conversation. I don't necessarily want to make the decisions or speak into them. I just want to hear how they're made so that I can know how those can be communicated to the church. So how can I gain access to your brain?
Does that relate to anybody? I saw the prayer request up there.
Yeah.
As I said earlier about being obsessed about the vision, as a prophet, I tend to want to be around other people who are just as obsessed about the vision. If I see ownership and enthusiasm about the direction we're going, I want you to be around me. I need you to be around me because I want you to be a champion of that vision as much as I am. To give you an example, our church communicator, who's a part-time person, the other day, we did this project where some of the kings in our church came together and said, how can we get the big idea of the summer series outside of the walls of the church? And there was one king in particular who was a volunteer who just went above and beyond, did some really amazing things through a project that we did this summer and benefited a local foster care home in our area of Miami. And our church communicator came to me one Sunday morning, and we have this guy named Jeeves. Jeeves is this little butler that stands about this tall, who stands usually at people's front door with a little tray, and you drop your keys on, you know what I'm talking about? We use this as like a way to celebrate people who have gone above and beyond serving like Jesus. And we want to give Jeeves, and we bring him up and like a trophy for people to go home and they sign it. And Jennifer came up to me and said, Matt, Jeeves needs to go to Lois today. And it wasn't on my radar because I was thinking about my message for this Sunday. I wasn't even thinking about that. And I said, Jennifer, that is awesome. Because one of our core values is celebrating when we lead as we serve, when we show servant leadership in a real way. And she brought that to my attention. We honored Lois during that service, and it blew her away. Lois, I mean, she's a new follower of Christ. She had never been anything like this. It's a stupid little wooden Jeeves, and she was like almost in tears about it. It was a beautiful thing. I love to make people cry. And so Jennifer, I want to bring her along now more times like that and say, I need more things like that. I need you to be looking at the vision, how we can make it tangible today. And I guarantee you that will bring you more seats at that table and more times where I can just bounce ideas off of. I hope that.
I think some of you may be sitting there looking at from another perspective that you work with someone who's primarily a priest, and that's the situation I was probably in my church communications world. The priest being that they want to please everyone in the congregation so much they don't say no to things, and so protecting the vision becomes a really rough thing. So you have the charge of communicating 50,000 things, and all of them are important. And so how do people really figure out what's most important? And my suggestion for you there is to look for opportunities where you can help that priest see how people's relationships are being hindered because they're having too much stuff being thrown at them. Look for ways to point out how key communication messages need to be elevated to the top to help people clarify the next step that will then get them to the next opportunity. So we have to be focused on guests, clearing out the clutter so a guest can feel welcome and know what they need to do next to get connected and involved in the church. And then you open up those other opportunities. So even though they want to say yes and do let all these ministry opportunities happen, you have the charge and the responsibility to help all of those messages be communicated in a systematic way so that those relationships can flourish. And the priest will see the benefit of that if you coach and work alongside him or her to make that come to fruition. I think of things from the king perspective, and I have a few takeaways that I just want to share with you guys. As I have seen the church communication role evolve, I have seen it work really well when the king is using that perspective to serve in their gifts and talents and interests to do what they are called to do and grow to appreciate and respect what the other roles are called to do. There's a really scary trend that I've seen happening in the past couple years in church communications, and that's almost this attitude that I am a communications expert and my pastor doesn't get it, and I know so much more than him, and I am here to save the day. And that really scares me. In fact, it was really interesting when I saw Brad yesterday because I vividly remember sitting in Ministry Comm 2 years ago, and Brad shared just some amazing teaching time. And I had just got my iPhone, so I'd put on my Post-it some thoughts that resonated as he spoke. And I said, when did the role of the church communicator become frustrating, controlling, instead of empowering? I want to listen to people. I want to listen to people who are passionate about ministry, then spur them on. I don't want to control or be a gatekeeper. I think so much as if we work in our roles in a negative way, looking at what's deficient in the other roles and not appreciating what is there and what is positive and seeing how we complement those roles, if they had our roles and our perspective, we wouldn't have a job. And so we really need to grow to appreciate what they bring to the situation. And move people's perspectives from that of us being a gatekeeper, the person who's preventing messages from coming through, to seeing us as a ministry partner, someone who wants to come alongside them and open up avenues for communication and remove barriers that are preventing messages from getting through. And so just real quickly, the 5 things that I would pass on to you today, and in respect of our pastor friends, I put them in alliterative form. They're all good with the 3-part alliterative. My first would be to pursue the pastor's perspective. And that would be all of the things that Matt said take time. We have to be patient and sit and listen more than talk. We have to develop relationships with our lead pastor. We have to develop relationships with the associates pastors who plop in our office door and start talking about projects when we're trying to meet a deadline. We have to set those things aside and build the relationship. I had something happen just recently that totally took me back to that controlling, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening world. I was working with a client, and they had planned a major church initiative, a capital campaign that they wanted the whole church to be involved in. They had planned the launch of it to happen on Martin Luther King Day in January. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. What moron would plan a major church initiative to be announced when 30% of the congregation is gone because it's a holiday weekend? In my early days, I may have actually expressed that verbally and closed down the walls of communication immediately. And fortunately, over time and stupidity, I've learned that you wait. And through the course of that conversation, I found out that there were some key needs that were in place that caused them to want that date to be the time when they communicated. As we worked through those needs, we were able to move them to launching at a different time, but it also dealt with the other issues they were dealing with. So you have to take the time to listen before you start destroying the ideas that they're bringing up. My second one would be use your skills to support and not slam. It's so important that we educate people who look at things from a different perspective instead of bulldozing. I had a guy who would come in all the time and say, hey, I want a flyer for this. And we knew that a flyer wasn't the greatest solution. Had to sit down and explain to him our options for ministry communication, listen to him of what he actually wanted to accomplish, and then coach him through the most effective way to communicate. It takes time. But I promise you, the more you invest that time, the more fruitful your relationships and the more productive your communication will happen on the back end. The third one would be release the rules. Policies are crucial to organizing messages in a way that complement with the vision and it doesn't compete. But that said, we can never let a policy or procedure impede communication. One of my biggest regrets as I look back at my time on Traders Point is that I didn't take advantage of showcasing opportunities outside the walls of the church that for whatever reason didn't have value or significance within the church. We had a basketball ministry that was just amazing and had so much potential to attract and reach out and draw people into the church. But because the sports ministry was kind of the stepchild ministry in the church, I wasn't given permission to have my time apply to using that and creating a message that would showcase that to the community. And I wish I had stopped and said, hey, if we really want to reach out, we need to take the time to do this. And maybe that senior adult cookout isn't the thing that I need to spend my time on this week. And the last two would be identify that you're not indispensable. We as church communicators tend to work really hard. And sometimes we feel like we're the only ones who can get done what needs to be done. Sometimes that's a people pleaser in us. Sometimes that's the control freak that we don't want to let go of that messaging. But realize that you are a minister too, and it is your job to bring alongside other people to help you accomplish what needs to be done. If your family life is being impaired, or if you can't personally carry out the vision, if you can't spend time with your unchurched neighbor because you're too busy working till 10 o'clock on a Friday night, something's wrong with your role. And you need to have candid conversations with the pastor to talk about how can my life be balanced so that I am working and supporting ministry, but also living it out. And then finally, just celebrate your calling. If you have not studied the life of Esther, Beth Moore has a fabulous Esther study I just did. I highly recommend it for guys. You can put a disguise on the cover of the book. But all of us as church communicators must study the life of Esther. She was a queen, a king, of stopping and identifying her role, knowing she was called for such a time as this, to be prepared for what God wanted to do in her life, to use her in speaking to a whole plethora of people at one time. She took the time to build a plan and to work it and get to know the other perspectives so she could approach the messaging in a way that she could have the greatest impact. And so today we leave you with that message to celebrate your calling. Each of you in this room will be going back on Monday to serve in a role that you have been specifically designed for. And we want to celebrate that with you, and we want you to return with a fresh passion for doing that in a way that will help the good news of Jesus Christ impact even greater lives. So thank you so much for your time today. We're going to stick around. If you all have some more questions for Matt, feel free to interrogate him, and just hope the rest of your conference is very fruitful.